Oh, can I wait 1 second?
Yep.
So just want you to meet Dylan.
Hi,
This is
Dylan.
Dylan Willett. He's our new assistant town planner. He's came to be introduced this evening. I'm not planning on staying for the meeting. Just started yesterday. So, you know, let's let him get used to the commute. Sandra Capola,
You don't want them to stay
Brian
here.
Rogan, John Bailey, and Tim Zigma, and Steve Yelich, yes, alternate, he's fine, and, we're really excited he's here, and he's already dove in doing permits and getting started, so
Excellent,
pretty
excellent.
exciting.
Now he's exhausted, wants to go home and have a beer. Whoops. I said that.
You don't want them to be scared, so it's, well, us, so let them go, right?
Yeah, yeah. We don't want to.
We're scared of that go first night.
Are you ready?
Am I reading that?
Okay. Welcome everyone to the Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. This is August 4th. It's our regular meeting. Before we begin, I would like to just advise that this is being held in person and on Zoom. And if you are joining us on Zoom, we ask that you mute yourself so that we don't get feedback. However, if during the public hearings you wish to comment, you would have to unmute, announce yourself and provide your name and address so that we would have that for the record before continuing into the comments. So we try to keep it very cordial and we try to keep it where we don't talk over each other. So bearing that in mind, welcome one and all. Now I'm going to call the meeting to order. So it's 7:05. And I'm going to ask everyone to rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. And Brian, will you lead us in that?
I pledge allegiance
Allegiance to the flag of the United States, of the Republic, for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Steve White out there.
Get a flag be-
Yeah, I know, he's doing really good. Steve, because you are an alternate, I ask that you be seated for the meeting because we do have some folks that are out and not with us. And do you want to do a roll call on that or do you want me just to wing it?
I'm gonna roll call. That will be best. So John Michael O'Brien,
Absent.
Diane Tracy,
She's excused.
Timothy Zigma,
Here,
Brian Rogan,
here.
Sandra Capola,
Here.
Scott Pennell,
Absent.
Chairman Deely,
Here.
Andrew Lang Gaming,
Absent.
and Steve Bailey Jr.
Here,
Yay.
and seated. Correct, just seated. now?
Yes, and seated for the meeting. Okay. All right, so let's begin. We are up for the review of the minutes. We have first up July 14th. Has everyone had a chance to review the minutes? Are there any corrections? I think everyone was here, basically. All right. Tim has just provided us with a motion to approve. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Mr. Rogan. Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
aye,
Those opposed, so moved. Moving on to regular minutes for July 21st. Has everyone had a chance to review them and or are there any corrections? Make a motion to accept the minutes for July 21st. Okay, Sandy Capola has the motion. Do we have a second? Second by Mr. Zigma. Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
aye,
So moved. I know, Steve, I keep looking at you online and I'm thinking he's gonna come in with a second and then you're, missed the chance. All right, we're gonna go into continued old bill business. This was the bill permit application of the Southington Cheshire YMCA. We fill plus or minus 90,000 cubic yards, plus or minus 6.7 acres at lot 5, lot 15 Southington Road, 213 Southington Road. This is continued on the 21st of July. So welcome back, Mr. Mark Bovee. No, that's all right, go ahead.
Mark Bovee,
I guessed right.
representing the applicant, we do have Mark Poole here, CEO at the YMCA. He can answer any questions you might have regarding the operation or anything else that he may be involved with. As you mentioned, this is a cold hole for 9,000 yards, located basically the old location of the old Myers gravel pit. Utilizing this curb cut on Southington Road, bringing the vehicle into the rear and then disposing of the material and then eventually laying it out in one foot lifts to reach the anticipated grades. What we're looking to do is kind of replicate approximately the grading of the original grades prior to the gravel pit taking operation. And as I mentioned at our last meeting, the materials coming from a project that the YMCA is with in dredging Sloper Pond on East Road in Southington. It's been over 100 years since that pond has seen maybe probably ever. And we're trying to bring it back down to a grade that can be used for recreational swimming and the boating, and try to alleviate the weed issue that has cropped up over the last few years. Over the past couple of days, I've forwarded Maureen a series of emails. I all got copies of those emails. But the first one was a meeting that we had, me, myself, and Mark, with Craig Boyd, who's the owner of Yield Industries. He's the contractor who was awarded the dredging contract. And I just want to touch base with some of the points that Mr. Boyd made, and I asked him directly some of these questions, so he responded basically what I understood to be your concerns. First of all, the contractor stated he will create a transport plan prior to bringing material onto the site. As I mentioned at the last hearing, we'll have a pre-conference meeting, but he will put down on paper exactly what he's going to do for the project before any site is removed, material is moved to the site. He'll share that with staff, police. I believe the state DOT will get involved with this also, but we'll have all this done. When I asked him about the trucks he uses, he had a couple statements about that. He said the trucks are relatively new, and while the trucks may be bigger, he only transported about 12 cubic yards, so we're figuring about 16 cubic yards per truck. He fills the trucks about 75% capacity. The trucks are watertight, meaning even if there were water within the trucks, it's not going to drip out and go on the roads. We do have dewatering on site, and we do not anticipate any water being in there, but he just wanted to emphasize the trucks are going to be watertight. His company owns 3 newer trucks, and these trucks are, as he says, are quiet. They don't have the noise that older trucks do. So they're very quiet when running. He also mentioned that with the smaller loads, it's going to reduce the need to brake some of these vehicles when they come to and over the site. So they're not going to have to apply full brakes with a smaller load because the trucks are obviously geared, and so they can handle heavier loads if necessary. But he stated that he does not foresee a braking noise issue as vehicles come into the site. The contractor expects 2 to 3 trucks on average per day working the site. So in that case, those will be his trucks. There will be some days he can foresee as many as 5 vehicles being used. I think on more catch-up days, maybe when the weather is bad and kind of remove material. But he estimates approximately 35 trips per day on average. Now that could mean that some days could be 10 or 15, some days could be 50, but on average, he's estimating 35 days. He does not tolerate speeding at all with his employees on the bend, and that was part of the transport plan. He says any evidence of speeding will be digitally followed up, and he will not tolerate anything, and these are his employees, his insurance. He said he makes sure that those employees will follow the rules. The contractor will also employ a full DOT signage package, warning drivers of truck traffic and trucks be entering and leaving the site. This signage can be supplemented as required by the town, the police department, with senses of state of DOT highway. Typically, the package is probably satisfactory, but again, if the police department has any additional signs. So what this full package means, it means there will be signage on both sides of the roads indicating that there will be construction equipment on the roads. You've seen this when they've worked on highways, you've seen these signs that say that. There will also be signage indicating that there'll be trucks entering and leaving the site as they approach it, so drivers will be aware that this is a construction entrance and there will be vehicles. Again, he's fully open to anything DOT or the town requires for signage, but he says a full signage package, and that's his words, not mine. His hours of operation, he would like to see between 7 and 5 p.m., which is a 10-hour period. There'll be no hauling or anticipated on weekends. The hauling will be in basically weekdays. There will be activity on the site for grading and cleanup, maybe on a Saturday morning, but all that work will follow the town ordinances for construction noise, construction activity, as stipulated in the ordinance. And he also wanted me to point out that there was a on-site response package on site for all work. So in case there's a breakdown, there's a leak or any environmental issue, there will be a full package of materials on site to immediately rectify any work that happens there. He doesn't have to go off site and bring this thing in. His base is operation is Torrington, but he'll have that at the site to alleviate any problems. I also looked at Southington Road, and those of you who've traveled and know or don't know, the sign is actually signed for 30 miles per hour. Just an example, Norton Road is signed for 35. But this road is signed, at least for East Road to Chamberlain Highway at 30 miles per hour. I think even less as you enter some of the more residential portions of Southington. I looked at the DOT manuals and looked at stopping distances. Now, typically when a site is signed for 30 miles per hour, you usually try to design your stopping distances for maybe 10 miles per hour faster. At 40 miles an hour, the stopping distance is 330 feet. Now, I should mention before we get that far advanced, I did look at the stopping distance or site distances both east and west off of Southington Road. I did this on Google Earth on Streetscape, and then I actually went out this morning and confirmed those dimensions. But the site distance to the east is 660 feet. If you look at the pictures, I don't know if you've got copies of those pictures. You did get pictures. If not, I can pass these along. But there's actually a sign down. Pass them up to the commission.
If you would. Oh, there you go.
If we got them.
Brand made copies, I'm sorry.
Where are they?
In your supplemental package, probably at the bottom.
The email from Ramsey on the top.
If you look to the east, and I apologize for the early morning glare from that picture, but the site distance is 660 feet. If you notice the sign down by Ray Dola's driveway, which is the house right next to the cemetery, that's kind of the extent of what you can see. And while I do have streetscape photos, I want to take those photos back at the street line so you can actually see what the truck is parking as opposed to what a Google vehicle is sitting in the middle of a road when they took those pictures. But that site distance is 660 feet. The site distance to the west is slightly longer, 670 feet, and that basically goes up that crest of that hill, which is right across from the driveway Mr. Hall has to his small farm up in that location. but that's 607 feet. Now, when I looked at the stopping distances at 40 miles an hour, just 10 miles an hour faster than the posted speed limit, we had a stopping distance of 330 feet, which is about half of what you could see. So essentially, a vehicle would be going halfway down that road, and if he sees a truck pulls out, he would have to stop. So there's more than adequate stopping distance from those sightlines available, and vice versa. The truck can see the vehicle up the hill. More importantly, so he's able to see that vehicle before he safely turns out. If we went to 50 miles an hour, all right, and essentially 96% of the vehicles go less than 50 miles an hour. Most of them go 30 to 35. The stopping distance is 425, again, less than those two areas. I also did look, after I did this, I did look at both the Timberland Stockings Brook sightlines and the Edgewood sightline. And interestingly, when you look at these from Stockings Brook and from Timberland to that crest in the hill of the backwards, it's like 460. So this is by far and away more safer than that driveway making that turn. Looking westerly again, we're over 700, but I think the Stockings Brook side has a little bit better view than what Timberland does. It gets even worse when you look at go off Edgewood, where you have less than a 250-foot sight line to the west as Brook bends around the curve there. And that's really dependent on seasonal changes. As the leaves go up, that sight line becomes worse and worse. So from the standpoint of these available driveway locations, this is safer than the two town roads that exit onto that site. I also, when I went out there today, I looked at the volumes on it, just to get an idea of what 35 vehicles look like on that road. According to the state DOT, the actual traffic count on that road is about 3,500 vehicles. And that's broken down per hour. The busiest hour is the 4 to 5 o'clock range, or I think, on that quickly. Can't find it quickly. Here we go. That vehicle count is in the range of 328 vehicles, but 35 vehicles over that range is only about 1% of the increase in traffic due to this. And even if they increase to 50 vehicles trips per day, that only equates to 1.4% increase in flow. As I mentioned, it's interesting to note that the average speed is 33 miles an hour on that road. Approximately 40% of it, or 46% of vehicles go between 31 and 35, and only about 4% of the vehicles actually go between 45 and 50. So once you get about 40 miles an hour, that seems to be your average speed. I also looked at the traffic, the amount of truck space in that, based on what the contractor told me. At 35 trips a day, and he's pulling his truck at 12 yards. I know these are important numbers. You're moving about 420 yards of material a day. You divide that by 90,000, you get about 215 days that you're going to be moving the vehicle. That to me means you take out weekends and holidays and maybe some shutdown in the winter for extremely cold weather. You're probably looking at a year, slightly over a year to move all that material. So it's probably not going to be done in a 3-year period. It's probably going to be done in a year, year and a half, depending on how he sets up and he does his work. The other thing I looked at, another boring figure that only engineers have come up with, I looked at the gaps in traffic as we were going through. So I looked at the peak hour, 328 trips per hour. That means you're going to be basically have a truck roughly every 12 minutes going down there on that road. If we get back to the 35 hours, you're talking about a truck every 17 minutes. But when I looked at those areas and I looked at the gap in the vehicles and the distance between vehicles, if you take that and evenly divide it, you're gonna get a vehicle every 527 feet. But we all know vehicles don't come perfectly spaced 500 feet. Typically, you get one guy going 30 miles an hour and he's stacking up 3 or 4 cars behind him as he goes down the road. And that all adds up to that maximum vehicle. So let's just say you take 500 and you take 3 vehicles, you're looking at about 1,300 feet between areas. And between the bridge and the turn, that's basically, basically 1,300 feet. So what I'm saying is the truck can safely turn and wait for gaps that make that movement without pulling out vehicles and causing accidents or vehicles not seeing it. Yes, it may take a minute or two between the car coming eastbound and the cars coming westbound, kind of open up and make space, but the truck can safely wait at the intersection, wait for that movement to turn in. So it's not like we're gonna have a steady stream of trucks moving through the site. We're gonna have basically one truck every 10, 12 minutes. There's gonna be adequate gaps in to make the movement. I don't think it foretells the need for a flagman per se to be out that site. I think the signs are gonna be adequate to allow drivers knowing either before or after the warning that it's gonna be a construction entrance. And there's gonna be signage on the construction entrance. So I guess what I'm saying is I think this is about as safe a spot as you could find on that road. I looked at some other areas and basically the only other place that I could see was maybe taking a driveway off the third hole of Timberland and coming into the side where you have as much straight shot. So, again, looking at this, I don't know what else we can do on this site. The contractor has given me insurance that he's going to do the right thing when he starts working here. He's going to have all the proper necessary signage and precautions. I don't have anything else. I don't know if Mark wants to say a couple words. He wasn't available at the last meeting, but I know he's made some minutes, so
I could, that'd be great.
if you would allow me to make some statements.
Absolutely.
Good evening, everyone. Again, Mark Pooler, CEO of the Southington Cheshire Community YMCA, applicant for the fill permit. Certainly want to thank the commission for the review of the project, their guidance, and their assistance. I apologize if any of this is a repeat of some information Barbara may have given, but I just want to give you a little bit of history on the Save Sloper Pond project and the property itself. This property was willed to the YMCA in 1949 by a very generous woman named Cornelia Sloper Neal. She had a dream of developing her family farm, be a day camp for as many kids as possible. Since the YMCA has taken over, we've worked very hard to develop and preserve the land to help fulfill her wishes and to help serve as many of those kids as we can. Sloper Pond is the centerpiece of the property and it's a wonderful asset. But like all ponds and all living things, it has a life cycle. And the life cycle is happening right now, going from pond to swamp to meadow. I've been blessed with the timeline in my career to help intercept this process and make sure that this pond is here for generations to come. And that's our overall goal, to make sure that we can save the centerpiece of our property so that it can have all the benefits of day camp and many other things that happen on that property. I have personally been working on this project since 2003. That is almost 20 years of my 30+ year career at the YMCA, along with the support of many staff, volunteers, and contractors. This is a legacy project, a once-in-a-lifetime project for the YMCA. It's our responsibility to preserve this pond and this property to make sure it's healthy and here long after we're all gone. We've had multiple rounds of planning, revision, bidding, replanning, rebidding. This is almost 20 years of work, and we're not at the point where we can even see the finish line. We're just excited to see the starting line potentially coming down the road for this legacy project. YMCA Camp Sloper serves thousands of kids every summer through day camp, not just Southington kids, but kids all over the state. We have close to about 2,000 different families that take advantage of YMCA Camp Sloper. And of that 2,000, 208 of those families are from Berlin, Kensington, or East Berlin. So roughly 10% are coming from the town of Berlin, which is our third biggest service area next to Southington and Cheshire. In addition, we have other youth, teens, adults, members taking advantage of the property for team building, environmental education, outdoor recreation, and other functions. So as you can see, this project is extremely important to our YMCA, to all the people who utilize and enjoy the property, and connected to those who are here in Berlin as well. We're happy to make some reasonable accommodations to make this project happen. But the McConchie property is just vital to this 20-year plan that we've been working on. We will certainly work to minimize the interruptions over the next year. Plus, this is a small glimpse of time for what the benefit's going to be for so many kids in the future. So we hope that you'll consider approving the permit and help us fulfill the wishes of Cornelius Sloper Neal and help us with fulfilling the needs of thousands of kids and families in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I just want to wrap up. I know we spent some time in last meeting talking about the site and filling, so I did really haven't prepared anything new for that. I'll kind of talk that, but definitely that's been, if you have any additional questions, I'd be very happy to answer.
Okay, terrific. We're in public hearing, so I know.
Okay.
We did get a letter. I don't know, should we have the letter right into record or actually we can't? No, that's testimony. So we did get we'll just note that for the record that we have a.
The letter was included in and distributed in everyone's packages, but
Yeah.
and
Want to make sure it's down.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, good cover. Thank you.
So just a quick point of clarification.
Yeah.
Jennifer Capola, counsel to the commission for the record. Although it's not down for public hearing, you can accept correspondence regarding applications that are down for site plan that do not involve a public hearing. You can always accept correspondence on the pending application. So.
all right, yeah, so they had accepted it, we knew that was part of the record, et cetera. It was, the question was of reading it out loud.
So we have to read it out loud into record.
It's not necessary. It's part of what you've received on the application. That's fine.
Okay.
And for the record that it was in the initial package that went out, so the member of the commission that on Zoom did receive it in his package.
And the applicant has received a copy, Maureen?
I believe so. I believe Fran sent it out to you.
I don't think we've.
Let's give the applicant an opportunity to review it, make any comments and vote.
Sorry for that delay. And no, that's okay. Last minute. Thought I saw the email go out. We've been exchanging a lot of emails in the last couple of days.
No, we're good. We're good. All right, have you had a chance?
Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot of comments. My only comment was regarding the use of the property. I mean, That makes a comment that the property looks better than it has the gravel pit in place. 17 but I should also note that Mr. McCasher really can't do anything with the property. He can't farm it, he can't put a hay on it, it's very lack of topsoil, prevents him from planting anything. And so by us placing the fill in there and grading the soft property, he's gonna have full use of the property. So while it may look fine from a distance, the weeds and gravel below that don't allow for any kind of planting. That's Mr. McCasher's hope that completed, we can farm this whole site and have to back up. Yeah, the only other comment I have is the dump trucks, they don't have much information on this. But Mr. Stanton looked at the house in over 40 years, with 2 accidents, can recall that.
Yeah.
So,
Bart, can I ask you just a couple of questions?
Sure.
About the process itself. So if my memory serves me, you said that basically when they take the sludge or the dry, when they start to dredge the pond, is it semi-dry or is it dry when it gets loaded into the truck?
the method that they're going to use is they're going to do a wet dredge of the pond. Okay, a bucket into the pond. They'll lift the water up, and at that time, the water will start to drain. It'll be placed on a barge. The barge will be filled, the barge is above water. It'll be towed over to the end of the pond or another machine to take the material, lift it out, and we'll put it in the bin where it will be dewatered.
Okay, so it's basically gonna be dry.
I'm not gonna say it's dry and dusty, it'll be
I
moist,
bet, but
but
my-
it won't be leaky water.
Yeah.
And we're anticipating a 30% compaction of the 120. I think that was one of the questions, or at least points that Maureen raised in the memo. Our permitting allows for 129,000 or 125,000 to change cubic yards of material, but we're assuming approximately a 30% compaction of the
Yeah.
material, which is why we're at 90,000 cubic yards to be trucked across the boat, so 125,000.
But, I mean, to the best of your knowledge, I mean, by the time it makes its way to the truck, it may have some moisture in it, but it's not gonna be running
It
water.
will be
That's gonna be
dusty and
okay.
wet, you know, it'll be compacted.
And I'm imagining that there's some sort of roll bar on the top of the truck. that
Oh, sure,
will-
they have covers and stuff that they put on top of the material.
As far as transporting from one to another, now we're on site. And, so now you're going to dump or remove the stuff from the pickup truck, so it's obviously, we're gonna have that beacon caution thing.
Well,
which I
they'll
think
take
is
the
fine.
material, they'll put it where they want it dumped onto the area, and we'll bring it up in 1-foot lifts. So that there's further compaction materials, we're not putting 20 feet of material and having this whole thing settle down, we want this thing to settle up. We do have a laydown area, which is located roughly in this area. So if perchance they find that maybe a little bit too much moisture within that material, it will not be spread, it'll be dumped here for a day. It's close to the end by the silt fence, so that it'll drain off, and then they'll take that material and bring it in. We don't anticipate this being a factor, but we want to leave an area on the site so that if a load or two, maybe it rains the night before and they load it up the vehicle or something like that. Or maybe this is the bottom of the bin and it hasn't fully dried out and they loaded up by mistake. Then that area will be used. But generally, the material will be brought on the site, dumped into here, they'll spread it with a loader, and then they'll drive it back out. The whole process is going to take, 4 or 5 minutes. It won't be an all-day thing. There'll be more trucks coming in and stuff, so it'll be a periodic. We're talking about 35 on average trips per day. But that's
And when we talk about the 35 trips, is that a one-way trip? Is that?
well, it's one way and one way back. So it's 35 trips.
Round trips. All right. The other question I have is that I know that you guys were talking about just doing the trucking between 7 and 5 basically Monday through Friday. You don't see yourself trucking on the weekend.
I don't see the need, or the contractor does not anticipate needing the home weekends.
Okay.
I will say, And if he feels like he needs to, we'll come back to the town and come back to this commission and we'll talk about that. But at the present time of this permit, we do not feel the need to do that. Obviously, by shortening up the windows and it's going to precipitate more trucks being more frequently within the area. The goal is to roughly move about 420 yards of material a day. So, yeah, we're not building that into the scenario.
Okay. The other consideration I would like to just chat with you about is that when you get near the major holidays like Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility that perhaps that weekend, that long weekend could be enjoyed by the neighbors without the trucks
I think so.
continuing up at
I think so. I think
Friday at 7 a.m.?
you can either make that as a condition or we
Yeah.
can do that as part of the pre-conference meeting. The staff can re-emphasize that.
Okay. All right, those are my questions at this time. Anyone else?
Yes, when you originally gave us the math, you said 5,000 trucks. Is that still the same?
Let's see, I haven't worked out the numbers. Let's see, 90,000 divided by 12 yards, so it could be slightly more from the standpoint. 35 trips, it could be closer to 6,000 because he's using less material in the trunk. We're kind of spitballing numbers as we went, but my conversation with the contractor, I'm more comfortable with that.
I think.
I got a question as well. Go
Oh,
ahead, John.
go ahead. Go ahead. sir.
Are they gonna be using full body liners or just tailgate liners for the sludge?
I think they're just using tailgate liners. I don't think they're using a full body. It's only 12, they're only talking a 16,000 yard truck. So I think it's a full-size truck, but it's only backed up. It's not gonna be a trailer type scenario.
Okay, are the bodies equipped with vibrators by any chance to avoid the tailgate slamming?
I don't know that, but if that's a
Okay.
requirement, we can add that into the approval also.
Okay,
There's ways you can do it if you don't have a vibrator, you can let it down slowly and then you don't have to slam it down all the way to get things shut tight, so.
well,
It's-
the vibrator shakes the body when it's up in the air. So to
I
get the
don't know
muck
that
out,
partic- I don't know that particular answer.
Okay.
I wasn't aware of that.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I think it's a very interesting project. I think it has a good cause. My intention is to make it as, non-disruptive to the neighbors that are in that neighborhood to have the impact of those trucks going by. So let me circle back. Yeah, bless you. Let me circle back and ask one question. The trucks that you originally said there's 2 to 3 trucks that are fairly new and they're quieter. Are those going to be the only trucks that are on the site?
Contractor has told me he owns 3
Okay.
vehicle or he's called very quiet.
Okay, but I mean,
And he potentially may have to contract out for some other vehicles. He's talking is at the most maybe 5 trips or 5 vehicles during a busy day. And, I'm trying to dope out the numbers. I think you may be talking up to maybe 50 trips a day with those 5 vehicles. I would imagine he's gonna have something that complements his fleet. He's not gonna have something because he's very conscious of noise and speed. All those other issues. I should also note that the curving of the road, while not necessarily perfect from a travel standpoint, actually keeps those truck speeds to a relatively safe level. It's not like they're gonna be able to get up to 50 miles an hour on some of the road. Driving that road twice a day, I know for a fact that there are certain areas where you have to physically slow down. And in fact, I think the sight line at that hump in the road is a perfect example. Very rarely you're gonna fly over that hill at 50 miles an hour. You're gonna put your brakes on before you come over that hump and look at it. So, I don't think, well, in fact, I know from looking at the speed information that the DOT has, that coming off from the west is probably about 5 miles an hour slower than coming from the east. to speak. So I think the nature of the road itself lends itself to being a fairly stable ride for the truck driver. But back to your original question, 2 of the trucks will probably be leased that he'll use, and I would think they're gonna complement his existing fleet.
Quick question, regarding, and it's regarding the noise. I do know that sometimes you can see certain areas of towns, et cetera, that if trucks are going on roads, they're not allowed to use Jake brakes, et cetera, to keep the noise of the brakes down. I think personally, because of the amount of residents, you know, in that area along that road, that might be something we want to look at. To not do that, to keep the noise down. The other thing I'm wondering, and I think it's more discussion for us, but my only other concern has to do with the starting at 7 a.m. Again, not so much for the trucks being on the road, but for the dumping to start at that time. You know, at the load place, as well as my other concern is during certain times. And I'm not sure of this. I don't know the volume of school buses on the road at that during, you know, I don't know what time buses might be on that road, and I'm wondering if that's something we might want to consider as far as the starting time. That's all.
I can't tell you about braking though. He does not appear to be filling up his truck to the maximum. And typically when trucks can hold up to 16 yards of material, the braking is such that it can handle 16 yards of material. By filling the truck at a lower rate, he's not going to be inclined to have to use the extra breakage to slow down. So I don't think he's going to use extra brakes or anything to slow those vehicles down. I think by keeping those loads reasonable, come in that site without having extreme brake noise. As regard to the school buses, I can report at 7 o'clock. There's a bus that comes into the road, and there's a bus that comes up from Southington, makes a U-turn at the golf course and goes south. So those are the only 2 buses I'm aware of. But I purposely plan my trip to avoid those 2 buses.
Yeah. Because they stop at
You
different
might.
places. Or anyone else?
Yes, a few comments. When you originally came to us last meeting, we were talking 20 trips a day, which I thought was completely reasonable. 35, I can still wrap my head around. 50 is a pretty constant flow, especially for such a duration of time. And I know it's only 1% plus, but you're talking every 17 minutes at 35 trips per day, 17 minutes at every 35 trips per day. Now we're in that time frame of truck traffic pretty narrow. So I mean, that's a concern of mine. Obviously the noise is a concern. I do share the Commissioner Biela's thoughts about the vibration, the vibrators in the bodies so that there's no banging of tailgates. I know that you can pull off a pile very slowly, leaving the bed up in the air so that the tailgate does not swing back into the body, and just give it time for the momentum of the swing to slow down, and then gently put the body down is another way. So I mean, banging the tailgates is a big concern for me over that extended period of time. The other thing would be the backup alarms. I'm sure with such a large property that there would be a way to configure a route into the property where you can really minimize the time that the truck has to back up. I know there's some truck drivers out there who like to try and back up long distances because they want to show up where the truck driver is. Like I said last time, no cowboys. I want people who are respectful of the neighborhoods. The other thought was, I don't know what the state legal limit is on decibels for backup alarms, but I think of the Amazon vans, and when they back up, it's a very quiet buzzing sound that seems to satisfy the legal limits. So maybe you could look into muffling the backup alarms, not only on the trucks, but the bulldozer that will be doing the pushing of the material and compaction. So basically noise is a big concern of mine. That's first and foremost, and then the amount of trucks per day over that period. I think 35, like I said, I can still wrap my head around that. I don't like the idea of going to 50 personally, for a year and a half. I also do share, Commissioner Capola's concerns about 7 AM. I think 8 to 4 would be more appropriate, especially since you yourself just said doing the traffic study, 4 to 5 PM was the busiest stretch of time for Southington Road. So if we could keep the trucks off that, especially if you're gonna have a truck turning in and out every 17 minutes, that would really help with the flow of things. Other than that, I guess I just really like to turn it over to staff. I see she had a lot of comments. Ms. Juicy had a lot of comments that she had written down, and I would like her to go through them.
Okay, so these are distributed for you to consider. Some of these as either things that were brought up at the last meeting and or other things staff has noticed. One of the things I highlighted to myself was actually the coordination with the school bus stop hours and coordinating with the town with regard to, and it's number 10 on the things to consider. Coordination with town officials. Timberland sometimes has big events that create a traffic, time period. Perhaps they have a tournament starting at a certain time or some event, and coordinating with the town and or Timberland and the Board of Education with regard to those activity periods. There's also the chance in that time period that there may be some road work between DOT and or the town over the next 2 years. They may have a pipe that needs to be repaired. They may have, something else that needs to be done. So that ability to coordinate with the town officials, and my suggestion is that those coordinations happen between each of the new seasons of activity. They had stated that they weren't going to be very active in the summer when kids were utilizing the camp, nor in the coldest of the winter months. So, prior to them starting up again in August or September, prior to them starting in the spring, each time they start that cycle to re-coordinate with staff on some of the parameters. Now I'll go back through the list. Because I had jumped to that, but I had highlighted it as what I wanted to specifically mention. So the zoning regulations allow for a fill permit up to 3 years, and you can determine the length of time up to that 3-year period. You may, one of the things you may consider is an update or reevaluation or conditions after 1 year or so, after a certain time period, see if a problem arises in a certain place that you want to address, particularly with the noise and or the truck traffic. Those seem to be the two main issues. You, I think, covered pretty much all of the restrictions with regard to truck traffic operation timelines. And so now I don't remember what 10C3 is. I think it is the need for showing, providing a updated plan. With regard, so that was with regard to his description of the bulldozing and compacting. And I think it's a matter of determining that the description that Mr. Bova gave with regard to the 1 foot grade.
12 inch.
Yeah, 12-inch lifts and the compaction that he described versus the requirement in the regulation how the finished grades are periodically bulldozed or otherwise treated with covered fill area. He addressed that. Right, you agree with me on that? At the time I wrote it, that was still being described. Again, some of the conditions are conditions that were actually part of the description. They'll be dewatered and tested for the hazardous materials prior to being transported to a site, to a site in Berlin. The environmental testing, of course, relating to that, and that it be accompanied by certification of the suitability of those materials for the end use of the property, which at this time is agriculture. It is a residential zone, so for no classified as unrestricted residential use of the property for reuse once with that done. And that's just a certification. The town engineer had made comments again about the compaction plan, and that be specified and had the criteria, and it's another comment further down as well, that the contractor confirmed that they have been provided with the parameters and that they provide certification that they have the parameters, they know the compaction, how they have to do it, and they've gone over the plan. And not just been hired, do it, you know what I'm getting at. All the necessary permits be obtained, Deep Army Corps of Engineers, Town of Southington approvals. I did attach the Town of Southington approval for you all to look at and read, with their minutes. So those approvals were obtained. I spoke with that email by town planner. And any other, proof of the required permits have been obtained. The stormwater prevention plan, including the discharge of stormwater and dewatering from construction activities, at least 60 days prior to commencement of construction activity. That's just a requirement to be submitted, and would be a standard requirement. Coordination with DOT again, which both 9 and 10 play into each other, coordination with the state and town officials. And applicable traffic signage, and the fact that they would work with us if there was a problem arose to modify the plan if necessary. He did the sight lines. The 13 is a correction that was caught by the town engineer with regards to contours on the plans. The final plan shows it's correctly labeled. Of course, standard comment on soil erosion controls being in place prior to any of the fill being deposited, and that regular updates are coordination with the zoning enforcement officer that changes need to be made or inspections done. Any other fill prohibited. This is a project that was proposed with fill from that is it's certified from Camp Slopers Pond, not from other sites, so not subject to filling from other fill material. And at the end of the project, the final grading plan be submitted so that the town has a record of what the final grading is at the end of the project. And with that, bonding as required for soil erosion controls and as required for a permit. And I would suggest that the final grading plan be submitted prior to the release of the bond, should you approve. So those are all things to consider, and some of them may or may not have been addressed where you tweak them to your satisfaction, given the responses you've gotten. I did make notes on some of the comments you've made so far, and I've noted things such as a maximum of 35 round trips per day, holidays, and surrounding days. The limited, obviously not on holidays, but the surrounding days of the holidays are also not days of transportation. And 8 to 4 for the hours. And that they will come back to the town for any weekend activity, just town staff, and I quote town staff, if that's up to your discretion, if you want them to come to the commission. And then whether or not you want to mandate covers on the material in the trucks, covers on the trucks, and vibrators on the trucks, or determine if that's necessary, given the description they gave of the size of the load.
All right. Further comment or questions from the commission?
It's just a couple comments.
Okay, Mr. Ziegler.
Backup alarm, I understand that's a problem. But that's a DOT regulation that they have to have them. And they have to have tarps that cover the load. So those two things are addressed by DOT regulations. And I don't see, most of the stuff covered, so that's not. But I was wondering if, we want, because it's compacted every foot or so, maybe we want a grade shot at, like 6 months, and then every 6 months until the project's done, and have a grade shot. Just evaluation of grades, that they're following the grades the way they're supposed to be. It's not a biggie, but I've seen sites go out of whack real quick. So you get those shots.
My only concern with that is that sometimes material may be placed knowing it's gonna be moved. So if we do topo at a certain interval, we have to make sure that those grades are somewhat final grades and not temporary stockpile areas you use. Push it over, so we can work with that.
Yeah, the main body of it is the grades you go on. If you're storing a couple because it was too wet or whatever, you got that layover spot. Yeah, sure you go have that, but the main grade should be monitored.
Mr. Rogan, I know that you wanted to.
Yeah, so it's on the topic of the vibrators for the trucks. If staff is open to it, I wouldn't mind a 1 month review, staff review to determine whether, because I've seen it done, I've seen triaxle drivers dump a load and have zero banging. So I think it's easily possible, as long as you get, the guys have an understanding to be respectful of the neighborhoods, of the neighbors. And so my thought would be a 1 month review to see if the drivers are adhering to the no banging and the tailgates, or do we determine at that point that vibrators are necessary in the trucks? If staff would be open to that. And then as far as Jake brakes, I think that it would be appropriate to say no Jake brakes on Southington Road at all. Just drive respectfully. If you go a little bit underneath the speed limit, I think that's fine, but it is a residential road. Even though it is a highway, I think that's a fair condition.
I would suggest with regard to your comment to the dumping, that the comment or rather conditions can be set that unless found necessary by the zoning enforcement officer. So if complaints come in, then we can then say you need to, and we would monitor, evaluate, or have the, get a report from the police department, see if they've got complaints, see if we've got complaints with regard to the banging, and then monitor them, and it can be written that way. So subject to zoning enforcement review and implementation of vibrators.
That sounds better.
Anyone else? Sandy?
Can I touch on that?
Oh, okay, go ahead, Steve.
Touching on the vibrators, if the truck's equipped with it, that's great, but you're looking at a $5,000 to $7,000 upcharge if the truck isn't equipped with it. So that being said, if there's an issue with banging, I would recommend full body liners. So the material comes out. The liner goes in between the body and the material. So it kind of dumps out like a garbage bag almost.
It's like a weather tech for a big dump truck.
It's, yeah, it's a, sure, if that's what you want to call it.
I'm trying to wrap my head around this, Steve, help me.
Talk her language.
Talk her language,
Yeah, dump trucks are not my thing, so.
neither am I. But yeah, just the liners go inside the body. So that material he's gonna be hauling is gonna be sticky per se. So personal opinion, I would recommend a liner if the banging becomes an issue.
So
If the
Basically,
body bang, if the tailgate banging becomes an issue.
if there's a remedy to the banging, couple different remedies to it. So if the zoning is, modern, any complaints or anything else, then we know what the remedies are to make sure that it doesn't happen.
Well, there are two reasons why trucks bang. Number one, to loosen material out, so those lights out. And two, because they're closing, they close rapidly and come bang down.
Yeah.
So, if I may, Madam Chairman, let me offer this as a solution. I would like to talk to the contractor and get some of the answers to some of the questions that were raised that I was brought up again. And maybe within the next meeting, I can work with staff and we can kind of work out some kind of motion or some kind of points for this commission to consider going through the stuff that we've already discussed. And we can put down a list of things so this commission can look at this stuff and see what points are. I'm thinking, I like the idea of the review after 1 month or maybe after 2 months or something like that. So in case there's issues and this complaints, we review the issue with the commission. I like the fact that maybe instead of a one-time meeting with staff, we meet out there every 3 months or 6 months or something like that. So that if the same thing that crops up over the last 2-3 months that somebody's not happy with, we'll have some communications on the site so the contractor understands what's going on. And some of these other points that are made, I can get some answers to some of these questions. I can talk to the contractor about his hours of operation. If we shrunk the hours down a little bit, what does that do with the frequency of trucks? I can find out what kind of trucks he would bring in on a lease basis that the supplement his existing fleet. And I can have answers for all this, so the commission's just not making conditions on all this stuff. We can have some answers before we get.
Okay, so you want to continue this?
I think I can get some questions. I can work with staff.
Yeah.
Maybe I can come up with something that I can look at it.
Yeah, like I said, I think it's a noble project, but I would really have to watch out for the neighbors.
I just see a lot of conditions coming on board.
Yeah.
I want, I'm not aware, I want to be able to check on those conditions, make sure that.
Okay, sounds fair. Rest of the commission, concur? Okay, so we then need a motion, there is time, and we can have a motion to continue.
Make a motion to continue with
Just, discussion, all right?
discussion to the next meeting or when,
All right, that would be,
next meeting to.
August, okay. 18th. Okay, motion to continue for about the 18th of August, next meeting, we have a second.
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Steve Biella, and the motion was held by Ken Zigma. All right, further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
All right,
Okay, great, so moved. All right, then we're gonna go on to, thank you.
Thank you.
Then we're gonna go on to public hearings. Now, the first one is, do we need to give a call for the public hearing? Oh, my goodness, it's quite lengthy, but just the facts, man, give us the facts.
No, I'm good, I can read it.
A little bit.
That's all right, I can read it. A little short story, but we should be okay.
All right,
You
fine,
man,
everyone.
I-
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Oh, right, I'll,
Good morning.
That's scary.
I'm going to have to light that. Oh,
Why don't we?
All right, Town of Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission notice of public hearing. The Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission will hold public hearing at its regular meeting on Thursday, August 4th, 2022, at 7 p.m. in the Town Council Chambers, Berlin Town Hall, 240 Kensington Road, Berlin, Connecticut. Interested parties may join the meeting and participate in the public hearing in person or remotely as provided below. A public hearing and possible action on including an opt-out from provisions of Public Act number 21-29, an act concerning the zoning enabling act, accessory apartments, training for certain land use official, municipal affordable housing plans, and a commission on Connecticut's development and future. Codified at Connecticut General Statute Section 8-20. Pertaining to accessory apartment or accessory dwelling unit. A copy of said public act will be posted with this notice in the town clerk's office and available on the Planning and Zoning Commission's page on the town website at https://www.berlinconnecticut.gov. A public hearing and possible action, including an opt-out from provisions of Public Act number 21-29, an act concerning the zoning enabling act. Accessory form training for certain land use officials, municipal affordable housing plans, and a commission on Connecticut's development in future, codified at Connecticut General Statute Section 8-2B9 and 8-2P pertaining to parking. A copy of said public act will be posted with this notice in the town clerk's office and available on the Planning and Zoning Commission's page on the town website at https://www.berlin.ct.gov. A public hearing and possible action on a text amendment to the Berlin zoning regulations 4.A.2.B, acting town planner Maureen Giusti for extension on the moratorium on cannabis uses. A public hearing and possible action on proposed text amendment of Maureen Giusti, town planner, to Berlin zoning 4.A.2B for moratorium on multifamily housing development applications. A public hearing and possible action on a proposed text amendment of Maureen Giusti, town planner, to Berlin zoning regulations 4.A.2B for moratorium on multifamily housing development applications. The applications and related meeting materials are available at the Planning and Zoning Department, Berlin Town Hall, 240 Kensington Road, Berlin, Connecticut. Dated this 21st day of July, 2022, at Berlin, Connecticut, Brian Rogan, Secretary, Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission, New Britain Herald, classified advertising / legal notices, dates of publications, Saturday, July 23rd, 2022, and Monday, August 1st, 2022.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, so into the public hearings. The first item is basically a public hearing for the possible action including opt-out from provisions of Public Act number 21 229, which is an act concerning the zoning enabling act, accessory apartments, training for certain use, blah, blah, blah. So I'm not going to read that whole announcement because Brian just did that so eloquently. So we are in the public hearing. So I see we have our attorney with us, Jennifer Paula. So would you like to open the discussion in public hearing or?
Sure. Just as a refresher, again, this is before you as an opt-out at your request. We've had a number of discussions, I think, since last fall regarding this particular public act and the implications of it with regard to existing regulations that you have regarding accessory apartments. So I think you're well versed in what the content is of the statute and what the statute requires, and the fact that it does require, if you do not opt out, that you revise or amend your regulations so that they are compliant with the statute. So your regulatory provisions would change to match what the statute provisions are in this area.
Yeah.
So we've talked about this probably 3 or 4 times by my recollection. And the process is that you hold a public hearing, that if you do decide, at the conclusion of the public hearing, that you do want to opt out, you need to give reasons on the record. And Then a decision will publish in the newspaper with regard to the action taken, and then it will go on to the town council, because the town council has to act as well.
All right, thank you very much. And I mean, just for the record, especially when we talk about accessory dwellings or whatever, or, you know, apartment-like dwellings in homes, this commission has been very receptive to applicants that have come for us on several different occasions in different zones, requesting, say, like mother-in-law's apartment or whatever, to put an addition onto a home. And we've held public hearings, and I think we've had good success with it. We are open to the idea, and that's why I think we've been handling it very well. We've been working with staff and with applicants, and I don't think that we need to fall in line with what the state is expecting from us, because we're already dealing with it in our own reality. So that's why I believe that we were looking at considering the opt-out option on this. But I do know that we do have to have some formal reasons supporting it. But I just wanted to say collectively that we have been proactive with this. So, Mr. Zigma, I know you have your hand on your button, so you have something to say.
Just, our regulations now, to allow it, on a case by case basis, basically. So I don't think we need, they have the opportunity to do it through our regulations. I got one question that just popped in my mind. This is training for certain land use officials. Is that in the statute for that training?
It is, the training is in there.
Okay, because any training, I like any extra training that anyone can get, you know, you know, but if it's in the statute, then you can't just pick one item out of the statute.
So, that's not really the subject of the public hearing, but, there is a new training requirement that was passed through that statute. And I think it actually does take effect in January as well of 2023. And what I will do is I will, provide Maureen, if she's not circulating anything in regard to it. I can provide something for her to circulate, so you get brought up to speed on that. And there are some great opportunities out there as far as training is concerned. I always talk about the March training that's held, well, it used to be held every year at Wesleyan. Now it's every other year, I believe. And that's a great training in terms of the manual that they give you. It's hundreds of pages long, and it has some of my colleagues, brothers and sisters at the bars, who are terrific. I regard as the presenters. So that's one opportunity, and then Yukon Clear. I can't say enough. I mean, they continue to add to their website. They have this great luncheon opportunity. Where they, one of the ones I had to them by Rain Gardens, it was terrific. It's 1 hour, occasional like a luncheon about a particular land use topic, and they've got some great videos online as well.
But it's continuing, just like, those things I continued for years, so I mean, it's something that is not unreasonable.
So, just want to note for the record too, that Ms. Juicy has prepared for you, some, potential suggested reasons. And I think certainly, Madam Chair, your comments go to the very first, recommended reason or suggested potential reason for opting out. But there are others.
Then we'll turn to our template and see if you want to.
Well, I wanted to make a clarification just so that you understood the formatting. So at the top of, in the bold writing, as well as on the call it the meeting, called the public hearing, that is the title of the act with regard to the training for certain land use individuals, municipal affordable housing plans, you know, the title of the app. And that's why it was all quoted at the start of this meeting. But this particular public hearing, and it will be on the next one as well, the next public hearing. But this topic here is for the opt-out for the accessory dwelling unit provisions of that act. Now codified as a statute. So just want to make that clear for the record or anybody else listening, that you're not talking about opting out of your training. That's
No.
gonna be a thing that's
I wish
coming up.
I wish I could do that.
And we- So, and we will have opportunities, as I understand it, there are a number of the organizations are working hard to put together some packages of training that will be, you know, kind of packaged for commissions to deal with this, because every commission in the state is having the same requirement. And so the training, several of the organizations are trying to formalize some of those opportunities. And that's why they haven't been necessarily pumped out yet. They're mostly still working on them. At least as of the last zoning meeting I went to. So as you said, we do have a provision relating to accessory dwelling units in the Berlin zoning regulations. You've had it for several decades, and in lieu of the new one, it would not serve as a needed benefit to the town because you already have. We've worked on the affordable housing plan, which has been now adopted, as well as the plan of conservation development, which is pending 2023, and both of them will, well, the affordable housing plan, as well as then the implementation of that, or the recommendations for that, will roll into the plan of conservation and development, which will then give the opportunity to determine what the needs are with regard to sort of the accessory units. At your direction, commission staff has been looking at the affordable housing regulations that exist for opportunities to where those can better be updated if necessary, and if that it's determined that any updates are warranted. So that's something the town is actually working on. It's highly unlikely that the adoption of the accessory apartment regulations would assist the town in reaching the 10% goal. 10%, you know, but don't count, so it's not going to accomplish that goal. And the statute further limits your the statute and adoption thereof limits your ability, commission's ability to then respond to issues within the town and formulate regulations that are not identical to state regulations. If enforcement issue, if anything comes up that we find there's a need in a certain area, then those regulations can be further amended. Once you know you don't opt out, you don't opt out.
Yeah, so it can't be like, oh, I changed my mind. Okay.
Those are the main issues. May have additional thoughts and concerns.
Sandy?
I mean, just really comments more than anything. I mean, I agree that I think we've addressed this in the affordable housing plan. We're going to be addressing it in the plan of conservation. I think Berlin already has like Maureen addressed, you know, we have something on the books already that's worked for the town for a long period of time. And I think keeping the, how do I put this the right way? Control or the ability to make adjustments or, you know,
It's like the human
Necessity
aspect.
you know, keeping it more local versus at a state level, I think is more beneficial to our town. And that's why I personally I'm leaning to or would recommend opting out of this.
Okay, I'll just ask Steve Viola if you have any comments, Steve, regarding the opt-out on the accessory dwelling. I know you're muted, so I'll give you a second. There you go.
I got nothing. Thank you.
Okay, all right, thank you. So, just to cut right to the quick then, did I hear a motion?
Close.
Oh, yeah, good, Brian's drink his coffee today.
Ask if there is
Oh.
any public comment.
Yeah, okay,
So,
Sorry.
See anybody?
I don't see any. So is there any members of the public that would like to address the commission regarding this issue? Now is the time to speak, as we are in public hearing. Hearing none. All right, so I'll entertain,
Motion to
close.
approve, now.
Close Gotta close the public hearing first. I know, I got screwed up today too. Go ahead, so.
Close the public hearing.
Motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Zigma. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Sandy Capola. Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So moved. All right, so motion, okay, then we're gonna go on to the next item is. Hold on.
The unit parking limitation.
Yeah, the parking limitations. I'm sorry, okay. I'm confused here. The parking limitations and, again, how do we feel about this? I mean, looking at what we've done, creatively within the commission, I would, I think that we serve the community the best by keeping this as an in-house item as well. Only because we've had experience with it and working firsthand and being creative with applicants and helping them out to achieve what they need and for the town to receive the parking that we need. So, but that's my thought on it. How does the rest of the commission feel? Because we are in a public hearing.
I feel that the commission has, right, the opportunity. Frequently. Still, any changes or anything requiring with the times of yeah. So I think we've already begun like the other item, addressing most of it.
All right.
What is your Julie and Commissioner Zigma? That's been done a good job at parking, and I think we've shown that we are willing to work with applicants. It's not like we've got a really strict take on parking, so I see no reason to go with this public act.
Okay, and Mr. Biella, how about yourself? Any comments?
No,
No, Sandy, any comments regarding the parking? Before we go to staff?
Oh, no, I think I agree with what's been said. You know, and I think one of the concerns is, but I think we've talked about in the past, is that if, you know, this could potentially increase parking on streets and roads, which then becomes a whole nother issue. As far as pedestrian safety, plowing in the winter, traffic, et cetera. And I think that's something that, again, over the years, Ron and the planning and zoning has done a great job controlling.
Great. Maureen, anything that you'd like to add?
I would like to emphasize that the commission has heard quite a bit of expert testimony with regard to parking needs of multifamily developments at the public hearings that have been held over the last couple of years. Generally since 2019, but probably even a few public hearings before that. But the ones we've had straight through from 2019 to 2022 with regard to what the parking needs is from traffic and parking experts that have provided testimony at those, and that there is a need for parking and what that parking is. Requirements have been for each of those developments. The commission has been, as you stated, very responsive to the applicant's demonstration of what that need is. They conflict with the existing regulations in provisions in the statute, conflict with the existing regulations. They do have that possibility of significantly impacting neighborhoods and in a negative way, and particularly where we have the insufficient on premises parking or in areas without sidewalks,
where you may have conflicts of pedestrians and cars and visibility, safety, we have a number of narrow roads, so parking on the streets may create additional traffic hazards as well. And that if there's insufficient parking, it could negatively impact the ability for emergency services. If there is a conflict with access to the building because of the manner in which cars are parked, because they don't have sufficient designated spaces. Health and safety. Health and safety.
And, Attorney Foley, you have
I
any?
have no comments.
Okay, all right.
I think the conflicts are well known between, as far as the expert testimony that you've received, and what's presented again in the statute. It's indicating that you can only require one space for a one bedroom dwelling and studio apartment. And only two spaces for two dwelling units or more. So this does directly conflict again with what you have in the regulations with regard to dwelling units in section 9 of the regulations, and it does conflict directly with expert testimony that you received on some of these multi-family projects that you've seen. I've been present for those as well.
Thank you. Anyone from the public who wishes to address the commission regarding this application? Now would be the time to address the commission. Anyone? Okay, no one. All right, so everyone's going for the buttons. I feel like I'm
I'll
on
make a
fire.
motion to
Yeah.
close the public hearing.
All right, motion to close the public hearing by Mr. Rogan. Do we have a second?
Second,
All right, thank you, Mr. Biella. Further discussion, all those in favor, aye. Those opposed, so moved. Okay, now we're going back into the public hearing, so now we have, I have a public hearing and possible action on text amendment to the Berlin zoning regulations by acting town planner Maureen Giusti for the extension of the moratorium on cannabis uses. Okay. Let me start with this. We had sort of, go ahead. I'll let you begin. I didn't know where to start it.
At your direction, with regard to the moratorium that is coming to an end with the adopted regulation from last December. Staff has prepared this text amendment that adds a number of months as we continue to determine what is, as you stated at your last meeting, study what the impacts could be and look into the future a little bit about what will be the repercussions and how you want to handle regulations with regard to cannabis uses. So we've just simply prepared this with the additional days to December 31st, 2022. And that is the full amendment regulation, or to the moratorium, the regulation which is for the moratorium.
Okay, so the proposal is just go to the end of December for us to give additional consideration. All right, so we're basically looking at, right?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
so we're looking to develop regulation prior to December of this year. That date was based on the discussions at the last meeting. If that's not the date you're comfortable with, you have the discretion to modify that at this meeting as well.
I would almost want to push that out a little bit further, only because we're well into August, and I do know that staff runs sort of thin. And I was wondering if maybe just sort of so that you're not too much under the gun, so to speak, to give you a little bit more time, because I think there's some things that we have to look at. And one of the things that I've been noticing is that I've been reading articles that have been coming up in different local papers within the state. And there are concerns because as these towns move into this, shall we talk about retail, or do we want to accept retail in our town? They're finding that there are issues coming up that they thought they might be able to handle, but they're bigger. issues. I was just sharing with Maureen today, and I'm not sure which newspaper it was or whatever I saw online, but it was specifically to Old Saybrook. And there was a public hearing where the chief of police actually made an appearance and was urging the commission to really think this through, because their applicant down there, and I'm just paraphrasing, okay, their applicant down there is anticipating the hours of operation. They're anticipating between, it was like 45 and 50 trips in an hour. In other words, 45 to 50 cars an hour into this one retail spot. And it's in a high visible area. And now the police is saying, well, wait a minute, how are you gonna regulate this? How are you gonna get people in and out? And you can't have an officer there always directing, or are you gonna provide staff? So not only that, but the social services that come down the pike for the use or whatever projected use. I do know that Colorado, which was one of the first to legalize marijuana, is now having buyer's remorse. And so there's a lot of social problems that come out of this. And I don't know that we can put together in just a couple of months an idea or a regulation to govern our town. And I think we have to really sort of sit back, and it might behoove us to see what the other towns are doing and take advantage of the moratorium time to see how is this impacting the other towns and their services and the expenses that go along with the emergency services or ambulances or car wrecks or whatever. It's a Pandora's box, and I don't think we should rush into it, but this is my opinion, and I'm only one person, so I'm gonna be quiet now and see what the rest of the commission has. to
Last
say.
time I remember last meeting we had and talked about this is that we were thinking in June, I think it was, to extend it out. And we had time to get speakers here to, from Massachusetts or wherever that experience is. And pushing it out to a longer date doesn't hurt us. If we decide to do it earlier, we can do that.
And we did discuss it, absolutely.
We can do it earlier.
Yes,
If we're prepared for it before time, we can do it earlier. So I'd rather put it out the farther we can by the statute, whatever that is. And, you know, really look at it and get these speakers in here and know we're gonna, because I've witnessed so many of them in Massachusetts with lines of traffic a mile down the road. You know, and 5 or 6 cops directing traffic.
so I just want to clarify something, if I can just jump in, and I don't mean to interrupt any other commissioners who may want to comment about this. But I thought that the guidance actually to staff was that you would do a wait and see on the retail. That's kind of where you were leaning, and that you were more leaning towards the cultivation if you were going to permit any other particular cannabis establishment uses that are not part of the new licenses. It would be more on the cultivation end, and you wanted to sort of see what happened as far as retail was concerned in other communities.
Absolutely, and I think that that's right on to the point. I just wanted to, I mean, maybe I was wrong in expressing my thoughts because they were leaning toward the retail side. The cultivation side, which I know that we also have to address as well. I want to talk like what Tim was saying. I think we want to talk to somebody who actually has hands-on and is involved with the growing aspect, because I'm not sure what that entails. I'm not sure how much of an impact that's going to have on the town.
I think that subject is a little shorter subject, I think, that we can address. Cultivation, whatever, but the retail part
I
of
don't feel
it is
comfortable.
a longer discussion, I think.
It's more involved.
Yeah, there's so many things.
We extend the moratorium that's on both for retail and growing, correct?
Yes, it would be all cannabis establishment uses. We kept the language the same, rather than, we don't want to pick and choose for you. So we kept it, broad as it was.
we get the information and we feel comfortable with whatever information we get, we can put it sooner.
So what would be the furthest that we could recommend the moratorium for? I mean,
It really is up to you. You know, I think the one thing I will say about it is if anybody is interested in the town, it would be good to be able to let them know what direction you are heading. You know, you don't want to put people off if you're gonna have done. So, you know, I think if you are looking for a little further period of time, maybe you do 6 months or 9 months. Similar to, you know, what's official.
can I ask a hypothetical? Or say, so the hypothetical is, let's say, the commission decides that we do not want to deal with retail, that we don't even want to go that route. What would be the actions that we would have to take, or how soon would we have to take that action?
Well, if you decide that, you can, you know, certainly whenever you're ready to do that, you can pass a regulation prohibiting retail establishment uses, you know, related uses.
Like, no.
Yeah, well,
I would say, I mean, if you're, you know, I would say try to just handle it all. Like if you're gonna do the cultivation, you know, you're gonna do the cultivation, then let's try to just do it all as one regulation rather than, you know, adding to it a couple months later.
all right, so you're saying we shouldn't divide the retail from the cultivation, keep it as one lump thing?
I just.
You think it's needed that way?
Make a lot of sense to me.
Okay.
I think that, you know, it's best to just handle the whole topic at once. But it really is up to you. If you want to do the prohibition, we could have something.
So my thought would be, let's do the 9 months. That'll give us plenty of time to work on it. If something comes up and we have a really busy month or something, we can push it off to another month. Try to-
September, October, April, May.
I guess the other question I have as well is, did you want it to go back to the council once it's drafted? And you're satisfied with the content of it? Would you want to do another combined meeting with the council to get their input on it?
We do
So, I just-
combined meetings,
So,
but once we get our information from,
yeah, I would go to them with a draft.
Okay,
You know,
that's what you propose.
I think that's what makes sense. So that way they're actually looking at something concrete.
Steve Biella online, do you have any? Comment?
So you're saying you want to extend it longer than what we're doing right now? I'm trying to follow
Yeah.
what you guys are saying.
Basically, what we're saying is that right now the moratorium is until the end of this year. But because there's such an impact, we're talking about retail and growing.
In one, you're not
In one.
dividing it.
Yeah, so it's combined. So the whole idea is we put the moratorium out further so we can do more investigation. I mean, I'm sensing from the commission that there's no real interest in the retail side of the cannabis. However,
Oh,
there
no.
may be-
Understandable.
yeah, but it may be that we're interested in providing, you know, an opportunity for growing or for a grower. But instead of dividing those two actions, it was suggested by council that we keep them together and then basically draw or draft a plan for the commission itself to review and discuss, and also for something to let the council know what we're doing as well. I think.
Okay.
That's.
No, yeah, I got you now.
Because-
I just don't want to lose out on the opportunity as well. I mean, you guys are a lot more seasoned than I am. You guys know a lot more in town than I do, but it's here. We have to deal with it. I don't want to.
Are you referring to retail or are you referring to the growing?
No, retail it is what it is. If the commission doesn't like it, they don't like it, but for growing it, I would like everybody to really consider it. I mean,
Well, yeah,
That's,
what I'm hoping, Steve, is I'm hoping to get in touch with, somebody who may already be actively growing the cannabis, whether it be for medical or whatever, and
yes,
they're a cultivator, not a mini like Michael, we don't want.
There aren't many producers, but there is one in particular that I do know, so I can contact.
Yeah, and then this way, even if we did a site plan, site walk, which is done one of those. Even if we did a site walk to the facility to see how it's run and how it's worked and what the measures are, we would have a better understanding of does this fit in our town? And so, obviously we want to give the staff who's sort of tapped out in all different directions an opportunity, because she's got to catch up, and the attorney as well, and the commission. And then proceed from there. But as Mr. Sigma had noted earlier, and I'm not sure that you caught this, even if we set the moratorium deadline at a later time, and we feel comfortable with the speed at which things are moving, and we want to end the moratorium sooner, we can do that.
We got the
We can bring that
education
forward.
and
It's just, sometimes it's tougher to push it out.
no, I understand that. I just don't want to keep kicking the can down the road. Every time it comes up, we shy away from it, and
We're not
you
sure.
know,
I don't think we want to.
yeah, I know what you're saying. I know.
We want to be,
We want to have all our ducks in a row,
absolutely, thank you.
for sure, definitely. But
want to learn.
I just don't want to lose an opportunity
I
of
agree.
somebody wanting to come in here. I mean, providing jobs, providing a large building.
Well, I think if that opportunity exists, I think that person would probably be very pleased that at least we're looking at that as an option growing. And that they realize, of course, if we get our work done earlier, they may be before us earlier. So, but I don't want to stress the commission. I certainly don't want to stress the staff anymore than necessary. We've got a lot on our plate with the POCD and just with regular meetings and stuff. So I want them to know that we're going to keep reading and following through on some of this stuff, and let's see if we can line a sidewalk up or whatever. So that's why it's being recommended that we push it out further, because we can always draw it back. Okay, so.
Okay, thank you.
No problem, Steve.
Make a motion.
Wait, hold on, just one Sandy and then
Good.
I think I agree with pushing the moratorium out 6 to 9 months. I think 9 months would give us enough time to, we want to talk to growers. I think Attorney Capola, if you have that grower, the thing I would also be interested in is whatever that town happens to be. Maybe we can see what their zoning regulations are, how they work around that. The other question I have or comments I have is, one of the comments Attorney Capola made is, if we think that, for example, we know we're not, if we're in agreement sooner that we're not going to want retail. I know we're looking to maybe do these together, but what hit me before is what you said. If we know that's something that the commission doesn't want to do, why should we wait longer for that? So maybe that is something where we split up the retail and the growing. I'm not sure. I think that's something up for discussion. Any other question I have on that? Discussions regarding this, those would be special meetings separate. We would have to schedule those differently.
So a prohibition of the retail would need to be a tax amendment, so there would be an associated public hearing with that.
For me, I'm happy with doing it so broad, because I'm still haven't honestly made my mind up on the retail either. I understand it's something that we're not in favor of, but as Commissioner Jorsey was saying last meeting, that there is actually a spot on the Brown Turnpike that sells medical marijuana. You would never know it's there. So I wouldn't mind 9 more months to see how stores opening up around town or other towns actually, what the impact they have is. Because as Commissioner Ligmont was saying, I I don't know how many, when we're talking about one particular area, how many are in that area? Is it, is that customer base, for that particular dispensary over many miles, which is causing that traffic flow and that problem? So if you're having 4 or 5 in New Britain, or 4 or 5 in Newington, or, 4 or 5 in Meriden, also maybe having one in Berlin isn't gonna have such a negative impact that we might think it might have. So that's why I don't really wanna throw the baby out with the bathwater just yet. And I wouldn't mind taking a little bit more time to not only consider cultivation, but to consider retail, because there might be a spot in a particular zone on a turnpike that it actually does work. So that's really my 2 cents.
I'd agree with Commissioner Rogan. If we do go on the retail side, I think the Berlin Turnpike would be a better spot in town. I bet you a lot of people in the motels would get along a lot better, and our police force would have a lot less issues with those wonderful motels we have.
Okay, and now Maureen wants something. to say.
So
Has
in
something
your
to say.
packets, you received a letter from Chris Edge, the Economic Development Director. Probably noticed he's not here.
Yeah,
He's on vacation. And he typically asks that I make sure I bring this to your attention. And if you don't mind, he wrote a letter on both moratorium for the cannabis as well as the multifamily housing. And I'll read the paragraph on the cannabis uses moratorium. So this is from his letter dated June 29th, 2022 to Joan Bailey, Chairman of the Town of Berlin Planning and Zoning Commission. The first is, I'm writing this up, he's on vacation. Regarding the extension of the moratorium on cannabis uses in the town of Berlin. I fully understand the complexities involved with this issue, and as it has many sides to it with many differing opinions. I would ask that you not close the door on the option. Now, as I mentioned in a previous meeting, I am working with a gentleman who owns an industrial property in town who has been in discussion with someone who would like to operate a growing facility. The gentleman has an existing 40,000 square foot building, as well as recent approval for an 80,000 square foot expansion, plus or minus. The location is in an industrial zone and is bordered by a large body of water in the Berlin Turnpike. All I can say that is if the town of Berlin is interested in the new building, taxes and good jobs that a facility such as this can provide, this would be the location for it. So I'm going to vary from his letter a little bit and expand upon it with some of the conversation we had, that he is concerned that if moratoriums are extended, we may lose opportunities.
Sorry.
well, isn't one of the other aspects for us to decide if we want to limit the amount of growers in town? So we can actually say, we're only gonna allow one, because the town has what, 25 or 20, 21,000 people in it, or maybe almost 20,000 people in it. So, a lot of it goes by the size of the town. So,
And in response to that letter, I understand the concern of losing an applicant. But at the same time, I just don't think this commission is, or me personally, is ready to make a decision on these regulations. So I mean, maybe do 6 months then. And let's actually really figure out a way to focus on it, get it done and over with.
well, I think even by saying it's 9 months, I think we're realistically thinking it's gonna be sooner than that, only because we really don't want this on the burner plate. It's like a bad cut, you keep pulling the scab off, it's like, how many times do you wanna keep doing that?
Exactly.
So we wanna be able to formulate it, and then obviously you have to write a regulation. about it. We can't just go to the council and say, okay, we decided to do this. Because they're gonna say, what, you know, and
I mean, I'm kind of looking at the numbers too, and I don't want to keep kicking the can. I think we need to make a decision and do it, but at the same time, I know.
I think we're almost there anyway.
Well, I think one of the.
I think it's just
technical
technicality.
is what's happening in other towns, what are others doing, and I don't know if we're gonna have that answer, you know, in 6 months or 9 months, but you know, if we have the answer in 3 months, again, there's nothing preventing us from doing it sooner.
Yeah,
But I think if we, you know, let's say, okay, we set it out in 6 months and we're not ready in 6 months, then we're gonna kick the can again. I'd
Yeah.
rather just say, you know what, let's do 9 months and let's set a goal to get it done earlier.
yeah,
So I'd say I agree with that. So let's do the 9 months, I think, but I would also like for us to, consider, doing a straw poll of the commission, maybe do it over email like we did for the last special meeting, but let's do a special meeting and let's actually get some people on here with, who can give us firsthand experiences of like whether it's a counselor or a zoning commissioner or, police chief from another town or growing application people who can give us firsthand experience, even if it's not from Connecticut. I know it's been illegal in Massachusetts for much longer. Maybe we can get some of these people down here to give us their firsthand experiences so that we can make a better judgment call on what we want to do.
I would like to hear from some town. Choose wherever, some town, it's a similar population, 1,000, 30,000, whatever, somewhat similar population, and see what they've been in it a year and a half now, whatever, so what are their concerns? And that's all I want to really,
Well, if it's-
what their concerns, what their experience are,
yeah.
and that's it. You know,
Yeah, the other thing too is if you look at towns around Connecticut, they're already in the public hearing phase of this stuff. And see what's the feedback, what are they saying?
So I'm
To the-
thinking that maybe we look for a special, because if other people are getting this done, and they're in the process, can we look towards maybe October for a special meeting?
Oh, for a meeting, I thought you were gonna say for.
No, for a special meeting, where we can get some people in here to talk to us, give us their,
I think we could set up a meeting date. That we get these,
get it rolling.
people in here to give us the history of it. And then we have something to think on, you know, and go with, because it's so brought over to me,
Yeah,
you know, what you can do, what you can't do. So it's, fun.
all right, we're gonna do October.
Would you be opposed, can I, and
Go ahead.
we'll do it, like you said, a straw poll by email, you know, what's people's availability, et cetera. But would there be opposition if there's room on an agenda to do it on the regular meeting?
No, I'm not
You
opposed
know,
to
as long as
that.
it's not an agenda that's gonna keep us here till
Like the
midnight.
ones we had in the spring that were just pile on,
Yeah.
no, I understand that, but if we do have, like tonight, where there was one item. And then
No, I don't
we
think
had
we're opposed
this
to that.
number of staff
Yeah,
items, so this public hearing, you know, it is 4 public hearings, it is a big meeting night, but they're the topics that are planning topics for the commission. So, if that's a possibility too, I would like to, recommend that you keep your minds open to keeping it to a regular meeting night as well.
okay, that's
Just
fine.
looking at the schedule and what other meetings and what the kind of timeline, in September
That's
and
fine.
October are with conflicts.
Yeah,
I'm good with that as well.
okay,
So I think we can, I'll work with our corporation council to try to, find some speakers and then throw out some dates
yeah,
and figure out when the majority is available for that.
okay.
So, I'm hearing here that you'd like to modify the proposed amendment for 9 months, and that would be
June first,
May 31st.
Yeah, that would be.
I didn't
Well, I
count any of
think-
my fingers.
yeah,
Does the.
So,
Does they
oh,
do
right,
the
it's
one-
August 20, I mistyped that.
24th,
Right.
So, yeah, so.
so what is it gonna go to May?
May 24th or May 31st, or May, whatever other date you choose.
Let me say, can I make a recommendation for this public hearing?
Second meeting in May, whatever.
Then
it is.
we go into discussion for that, or do we do this part now as well?
We're in discussion right
Okay,
I think
wasn't sure.
if you have an inclination toward the date,
okay,
if that can be discussed so that if there was a member of the
Okay.
public present.
that's what I wasn't sure, I want to make
There's
sure.
any,
Okay,
but if they couldn't comment on it, they would have that opportunity.
Okay.
If you are already inclined, otherwise, yes, that could be something that you also discuss in deliberations, but I
okay,
think it's best on the public.
I just want to make sure we were covered.
May 24th and May 31st are both Wednesdays.
So we'll make it the last day, make it the 31st. Or does it have to be a Friday or something?
No. We don't need to.
Yeah, the end of the month.
Second meeting.
Well, make it the 31st. Just the end of the month, so you'll know. And we're not gonna need that much time. No, so it's a hypothetical, really. Okay. Steve, are you with that? Okay, Steve, Bial?
Well, I have speakers, you putting the moratorium into May.
Yeah, right now it's to May 31st, 23. But remember, that's just the guideline. We're not expecting it's gonna run that long.
Get the information we want.
We can do it sooner if we get all the information. But we're gonna work on a special meeting, and the special meeting will help us get more information, our answers, and that may be, depending on how long the P and Z regular meetings go, it can either be on an off night or it would be tacked on to a regular meeting. If we have a light agenda, it would be tacked onto that. You good with that?
No, I'm not.
Okay. All right, so let me ask what you're thinking then.
I think 6 months would be palatable.
But you understand the concern, right?
Yeah, I
that-
do,
Yeah,
absolutely.
our staff is pretty thin right now.
Sure, I know that, yeah.
And it doesn't mean because we're saying the end of May, that's when we're gonna make the decision. We'll probably make it 6 months or within 6 months, depending on how quickly we can get this information.
I think 6 months is a
Okay, all right, well then,
doable number, yeah.
okay, well then,
Commissioner
why don't we
Fiala, I understand where you're coming from, and
take a motion on this?
yeah. I think where the comfort I have is that we're actually being proactive about this. We are talking about special meetings in October, getting it on the agenda. So while you hear the number of 9 months is a long time, it's not like we're just kicking the can down the road. We are being proactive. And once we actually do our homework and get it done, we get our speakers, we get our information, and then we can make a decision. Whether it's 3 months, 4 months, or 5 months, the 9 months just gives us the leeway to get this done.
Okay,
But we are being proactive.
all right. Anyone else? That's it. Okay. Anyone want to make a motion on it, or?
Make a motion to,
Close.
You gotta ask our audience.
Oh, is there anyone here to address the commission regarding this application? Now would be the time to do so. Hearing none, do we have a motion?
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Close the public hearing by Mr. Zigma. Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mr. Rogan, further discussion. All those in favor? Aye.
Right.
Those opposed? So moved. And then we have the public hearing, which is the moratorium on the multifamily housing development applications. So, this is for, regulation, okay. Last time we were all together, I basically was concerned that we have a plan of conservation development we're working on. We have, staff that is thin and trying to do everything to stay ahead of all the business that is knocking at our doors. And I just want to make sure that nothing falls through the cracks. It's very important how we step in so much that whatever is built is going to remain with us. So when it comes to the multifamily housing, I know I've heard some folks around town saying, what's going on? Everything seems to be exploding, and growth is a good thing, but it also stresses the system. So my proposal is that we sort of step back until we see where we are with the plan of conservation and development. We were close to the 10% before. This may hit it over the, over the wall. We might be 10 plus. There's a lot of stuff that's in the hopper. Building permits have been drawn, but the projects haven't been built. So I would kind of like to step back and just reassess where we are with the need for affordable housing and the need for the multifamily housing as we press forward. I just, and I thought it might be a good time for us to just take a little bit of a breather from all the development and see where we are, let the dust settle. But that's the reason it's on the agenda, and I'm just looking for feedback from the commission.
Can I just make a comment?
Yeah, go right
regarding
ahead.
the proposed language?
Yes.
So if you remember when we discussed adopting moratorium language in the first place, for the last moratoriums, the text that we included or format to follow was to include within that moratorium text amendment, the reasoning. And so the proposed amendment is based on the feedback from the commission as well as staff input with regard to, it's almost in motion form as far as what the whereases are, so what the reasoning is for the moratorium to be just in that language, and that was provided to all of you and posted as part of the text for the moratorium itself is substantial reasons. You can choose to agree with those reasons, eliminate them, add additional as the commission thinks is appropriate.
Sandy.
Yes, I would say, I like how it was written up. I think it explains the reason why, that it's not something we're just pulling out of our hat. I think it's doing our due diligence for what's best for the town. And the one thing I would say along with that is that it is a town-wide moratorium. I wouldn't want to keep it open a certain, well, we're going to do it everywhere but this area. I don't think that's appropriate. I think if we're going to do a moratorium to kind of put the pause on that, it should be town-wide.
Okay. And what would you suggest, or are there any thoughts about how long the moratorium should be in place?
Sorry. The draft text amendment references 6 months, and I think that's a fair time for us to take a look at things, look at POCD. I think it's, we're going to be going into winter months too, so usually there's not much construction going on at that time, so I think the timing for it is right.
Okay. All right, anyone else?
Yes. I personally, wonder about a moratorium on this. First of all, we are getting what we wanted, basically. We wanted the revitalization of the Berlin Turnpike. We're doing retail and multifamily. The affordable housing issue is being addressed in that. And the revitalization of the Berlin Turnpike is happening. And it's happening through the storage place that came to us, to the construction equipment and everything else. The Berlin Turnpike is getting a lot of interest. Okay, and we heard about B&L and Dale Motel. People looking at that. I don't want to slow down that Berlin Turnpike. We're getting something that we wanted for years. how do we revitalize the Berlin Turnpike? How do we get stuff to come? And it's happening because the retail is built into the multifamily, and that's a generator for business. Those multifamilies are a generator for business. I know the problem with the planner being overloaded and stuff. I guess we do have another application now, if I don't understand. And, you know, if we were going to do it, I think it should be a short period. You know, because we're addressing a lot of issues with the, with what we're having down the road. And I hope to see that whole turnpike come alive, which I see it happening. And I know I've got the same comments from other people in town, what's going on. I think it's because 3 projects hit dirt at the same time. You know, people don't look at the paper and read the legal notices and stuff like that, and all of a sudden their eyes are opening up. And with the project in downtown, okay, their eyes are opening up. And this action, I see. Not well, you know. Throwing pictures in the paper with the stuff like that with action.
Tim, can you talk a little closer to the microphone, please?
I'm sorry.
Sorry.
We created that atmosphere with our economic development and stuff. We created that atmosphere downtown. We created the atmosphere out in the turnpike. Okay. And the process can take a little longer. We've done that with other projects. We brought it out. You know, we wanted more expert testimony and stuff like that was brought out. And the applicants did accept extensions to it. You know, they want to build what they want to build, they're going to accept the extension. So we can slow down with our actions, but I don't want to slow down
I guess,
the
all right, just really quick, just to respond to that, is that I sometimes feel that we've got all these things in the hopper, but they're not being built yet. And I do not want to be put in a position where all of a sudden we turn around and everything gets built. And then we realize that, you know, the services are stretched. You could talk about schools, you can talk about fire, you can talk about the police. I mean, it all, you know, bringing all this multifamily does stress the whole system, the support system. And I'm not saying that I'm against it. I'm just saying, I think it's going at such a speed that we can't seem to, I mean, it's really hard to put our hands around how much housing we've now brought to this town. I mean, think about it. You've got Orsini still got to build his condo. So the sign says coming this fall, 2022. And I'm thinking, he's just breaking ground now. So then you've got across the way, you've got a Daddio. You go up by Northeast Utilities. You've got the 505 Turnpike. You've got the tiny houses. All of those are coming back at us. And it's almost as if it's like a wildfire. If it's controlled wildfire, you're good. But the minute that fire, that blaze gets out of control, people start pulling up stakes and running in the other direction because they're gonna get burned out. But, and I don't want that to happen to our town. I still want to make sure that we're in there trying to protect our character that makes Berlin a better town than some of our surrounding neighbors. So that's where my perspective is from.
through our zoning, I think we've done that. You know, where those units are going, where they can go. You know, I understand that it's a population thing, yes, populations go up, grow.
how many,
But every time you build a condo unit and you only got 20% affordable.
No, but how many-
Numbers that go outweigh the affordable.
but what do we have? like-
And your 10%
what do we have on
would
the
be
books?
more.
We have like 400 on the books, right?
More than that.
They haven't been built yet. Think about it, we're not talking about one person in this condo, you might be talking about 3 or 2 people in the condo, or maybe even 4, maybe there's a family of 5 are getting into the unit. And it's just, I see that, like I said, it just seems to be, it's going so fast, I'm afraid we're gonna lose control. Sandy,
I do agree that it's, I think pumping the brakes a little bit is not a bad idea to see what we're gonna be getting in the units as far as, is it gonna be, 55 plus people who are shrinking down, or is it gonna be starter families that have children? We don't know what the resources or the pressure is gonna be on the Board of Ed, fire, police. The other part, I look at it and trying to think of the right way to say it, but right now, okay, everybody's into the multi-housing, let's put up condos, let's put up apartments, let's build. And my concern is that the same thing happens that happened years ago, or, hey, motels are the thing, let's build motel. Hey,
Yep.
let's put up used car lot. And I think, you hear people complain about that, well, we had all the motels, now we have all the car lots, and I'm just trying to restaurants, it's gonna be the same kind of thing, so I think, I don't think 6 months is that long of a wait to look at things, but again, that's just my opinion.
yeah. Brian,
Yeah, so my thoughts are, and a big part of the reason that I support this 6-month moratorium is because we are, part of our plan of conservation is we have hired a consultant to do a review of our BTP zone and let us know if it's being effective. And I think that within the 6 months, he can give us an answer on what outside perspective, who has an education in this, thinks. And I mean, I do agree with the idea. I love seeing the Berlin Turnpike revitalized, especially when it comes to seeing, commercial or industrial. Yeah, I don't think so. I agree. I don't think 6 months is all that long. I don't like the idea of just going ahead and taking in applications and then pushing people off, because now we're teasing them and we're spending their money
yeah,
when instead they could just wait the 6 months and come to us with a solid plan. So I do think 6 months, I don't think it's that long. I do think it's time to take a breather, hear back from our experts and see how things go. We have really, in my time on the commission, which has only been 5+ years, we've done a lot. So yeah, I'm not opposed to this 6 months.
well, 6 months brings us to what, February?
Yes.
Yeah, so it brings us to the end of February. And generally speaking, applications are slow coming in during the winter months.
Yeah.
And they start to pick up.
Building season is not till spring again. Okay, projects that are in the ground right now to go build.
Yeah,
Hopefully get something closed where they can work on it during the winter.
yeah,
And the next building season is spring.
yeah.
So.
Steve Ayala, I think he's leaning forward. He wants to say something. So while you're thinking on that thought. Steve, is there something you want to add?
No, I agree with everybody in the commission.
I know it's a tough one.
I moved to this town for a reason, to get away from the hustle and bustle, and I know 3 of you on the commission are born and raised. I don't know if Sandy you are, but it's a nice town, and it's a double-edged sword. I don't want to say the right thing or the wrong thing, but
Oh,
it's
here for your opinion.
like going back to Commissioner Rogan. He's been on the commission for 5 years. I've been on the commission for 4, and everything that's been thrown at this commission the past 4 years is
Yeah.
housing, multi-use development, multi-use development. So it's kind of hard to
Well,
delegate it.
all right. Well, go ahead, Maureen. Do you have something to add before Okay.
So the first being, in response to a comment made, I think someone alluded to it. Many of the applications that have been reviewed already, if not all of them, have at least site work going on that have been approved, or they don't actually have building permits yet. They have permits in for building permits or certain permits for site work, including the workforce housing on Deming Road, the RCD project on Episcopal Road and the Berlin Turnpike, the Diario project, Edgewater Homes is just about wrapped up. It's very close to finishing. Shuttle Meadow is doing site work at the country club for that one. Newport is they're doing well. They're obviously moving along rapidly and absent the environmental work, they'd be working. I think Shuttle Meadow development in the East Berlin is the only one of the ones I could rattle off quickly that hasn't come in for permits yet. Nor started site work as far as I'm aware. So those are, ones off the top. We then also have received 2 additional applications prior to any an effective date or a moratorium. So they would be processed as applications. That is the resubmission of the 550 to 554 Berlin Turnpike project, as well as the Little House Living, the land redevelopment, the motel properties. That both those applications have come in. As far as I'm aware, I don't know if any have come in the last couple of days. Any additional, so we still have activity. And the 6-month period was, for the previous discussions as well as the reasoning as outlined. Also back to the letter from Chris Edge, Economic Development Director, that's away for this meeting. I just wanted to read the part of the letter that he wrote that relates to this moratorium. The second item is the moratorium on the multifamily housing development applications. With over 350 units approved over the past 24 months, there has been a large amount of future growth coming to the majority, with the majority of them now underway. But I would ask that you consider designating the specific area of town where the moratorium would not exist. This area is the TOD area, say within 0.1 miles of the train station. This would allow potential new development, but it would be within the area with existing infrastructure, as well as be in a location where additional multifamily units are best suited. Thank you very much for reading my thoughts, as there's additional development that can happen care of a growing facility, as well as within the TOD area on Farmington.
Okay, that's thoughtful, but I can't in all honesty say that one area can have development and the other one can't have multifamily. So I can't, I have to address it. My perspective is that I have to address it as just, it's either going to the moratorium to help for reassessment or we're not. But I can't split it and say these guys can build, but those guys can't. That's not fair.
I have to agree with you, as much as like we can't do spot zoning, I don't think a spot moratorium would be very fair either.
No, absolutely.
Yeah, there's pitchforks.
I agree with you too.
Again, I mean,
Let me reconsider myself.
6 months.
Because of the applications that we have, some other applications. That and with the building season in mind. I don't mind that there's a moratorium to December 31st or something like that. So if there's an applicant that wants to be in the building season, come 4 months later, 5 months later, that they can get an application in. That we can address any concerns that you have during the time between now and December 31st.
My question is, Maureen, where would we be with the P O C D at the end of December?
So
I was just.
Oh, okay, yeah, because
one of the hopes, somewhere, the conversation I had with, Francisco, the consultant, with regard to it. We are expecting to be, pulling together that draft plan, during the winter, by, hopefully December time period. That will be when the draft plan is, pulled together, to really be analyzed.
Okay,
So the study work, moving into it, will be presented to you in the later fall months,
yeah,
November,
all right. Okay,
possibly October. So you'll get that. Did you recall a different conversation with regard to that?
No, that's my recollection as well, because I know that you had communicated that even at the last meeting. I think one of the things too is, again, this promise of the consultant to provide you with information regarding the multifamily housing, that can't be overemphasized.
yeah,
So there is the expectation, there's work being done specifically to address this issue. And you're awaiting information, and this was pointed out at the beginning of the public hearing, I think Brian was the one who said it. You're waiting for this information from, an expert who's looking at it and studying it and trying to figure out in order to advise you, make recommendations to you. So that's the other piece of this.
yeah,
But you're gonna need, commissioners like that too, I think you're gonna need time to take that in, to digest that, and then determine too, whether or not you want anything additional, like if there's something that they didn't consider, or something like that. So that's a process in and of itself, as you know. I mean, too, the path that we traveled even on the affordable housing plan. We kept going back. So,
This moratorium would be the same as the one we just discussed. If we say 6 months and in 4 months we're ready to go, we can always
yeah,
use it that way as
or,
well. But I think giving ourselves 6 months
you just let this.
is good. Yeah.
yeah,
6 months.
all right, do we have
Yeah, I was gonna say 6 months goes really quick. I don't think it's gonna interrupt any, forward momentum in the revitalization of the community.
yeah, all right. So we're still in the public hearing, so I think we have to. Is there any other discussion on this at this point? Oh, anyone from the public wants to address the commission? No. Okay. So I'm hearing none.
I'll make a move.
Go ahead.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Okay, thank you, Sandy.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, Brian has the second. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Right,
Those opposed, so moved. All right, going into old business. So first is we have the opt-out on the accessory apartments. That's item 1 or A. So commissioners, just circling back and
Make a motion to approve.
make a motion to opt out or approve.
It would be a motion to opt out
I'll
from this statutory provision. And again, you do need to state the reasons on the record for the action. So that really should be part of the motion.
State the motions, or can we refer to how eloquent they are?
Well,
Staff.
By staff, huh?
yeah, we have that comment
Or
to
could
it.
certainly be incorporated as the reasons for the action to opt out.
I'll amend my motion to include staff comment.
And the fact that we have been dealing with accessory dwellings on our own, and we've had great success with our zoning regulations. All right. So do we have a.
Yes, I will
Okay.
second the amended motion.
Okay.
That includes, the reasons that were read into public record earlier from our staff.
Excellent. Do we have further discussion on this? So all those in favor? Aye.
right,
Those opposed, so moved. All right, item B is the opt-out for the parking. Provision. Yeah,
Council, because of the type of comment. I mean, it was a unanimous vote, but the roll call.
Roll call, it's not necessary.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make sure when we
all
have
right,
issues, the mic.
that's good. So now we, pertaining to parking, there was a consensus to opt out or as we address those issues on a need basis. And our regulation deals with them successfully, and we incorporate them into the projects as we go along, and we've had no problems with, we've worked well with the applicants in the past, and we kind of like to feel we have that in-house participation going in communications. But anyone else, or what's the flavor of the commission?
We've had, many, expert on this subject, president.
Including our staff comments by.
So I motion to opt out
Okay,
without staff comment.
yes, okay, Mr. Zigma, it's a motion to opt out for the parking requirements. Do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Second by Mr. Rogan. Thank you. Further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Tim? Aye. So moved.
Right,
All right, public hearing, possible action for the extension on the moratorium for the cannabis. And, yep, and do we have a motion here?
I'll make a motion to extend the moratorium for a period of 9 months.
Okay, and that's gonna take us, what do we say, end of May? May 31st, I think, May 31st. And that gives us time to study and do all those other good things. Okay, so we have a motion by Sandy Capola, Commissioner, and do we have a second?
Knowing that I know we're gonna be proactive with this, I will second that motion.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogan. Further discussion, all those in favor? Aye. Aye.
Nay,
Opposed?
nay,
Nay, okay. Tim?
I said
Aye, okay, thank you. So you have 4 ayes and 1 nay. Next item is the public hearing for the moratorium on the multifamily housing development, and that's being proposed for moratorium. It's going to be the end of February 2023. And we have a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the moratorium.
Okay, Commissioner Rogan
I'll second.
has the motion, and Stephen Biella has the second.
Can we get a clarification on the date? So it's 6 months.
6 months,
Okay,
it's
or
going
the
to
end of February.
It's gonna be the-
February 28th.
February 28th. Consensus, February 28th.
Do we have to notice this or anything, or can we just say, as of Monday or as of tomorrow, or I'm just not sure.
Yeah, we need a date. We
Okay,
need a
but-
date that's 6 months out.
At 6 months out.
Or it could be from the day it gets published, 6 months from the effective date of the regulation, day after.
I'm happy
It's
with
posted.
6 months today.
So
Keep it simple.
6 months to the day.
Keep it simple.
I thought it'd be, for me, the end of the calendar month is only better, but I don't care.
We'll do it the way it's
I'm
written here,
right.
6 months. The way I wrote it was 6
Yeah.
months with the effective date and the effective date being the day it's after the day it's posted.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
We'll keep it at the 6 months. I'm sorry, I messed up your motion.
All right.
Want to do that again?
So we have the motion and we have a second, so further discussion, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Okay, terrific.
Who was the second?
Second on that one, hold on, I'll tell you, was Stephen Biella. Way to go, Steve.
And that was unanimous.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, I'm sorry.
No problem. And motion to adjourn.
Before we adjourn,
Yeah,
can I make one quick comment?
yes.
I know that some of the other commissioners have a deadline date on when they're willing to accept materials that can be considered in the meeting. I'm thinking as a way to make our lives easier and a way to make staff's lives easier, maybe we make it protocol that the Friday before our meeting, no more material can be accepted for an item after that date, so that we have time to process it, staff has time to work on it, and if they show up the last minute with some crucial piece of information, they can ask for an extension of their item. But I think all these times that we're showing up and we're getting information within hours of the meeting, I think that makes our job lives difficult.
Well, I think that just sort of circles back to what I was saying before with her not having
Yeah.
The zoning enforcement officer, or she just picked up an assistant, which we're happy for, but I think the problem is that,
I mean, Corinne,
well, it's not so much a learning curve, because you guys, you were doing really well when you had a zoning enforcement officer, when Carol was on board, because she took over that, because she was able to actually sit and focus on applications, and she was able to slap the hands of developers, no, I'm not accepting this. What happened is when Carol left and things, the wheels came off the wagon. And so that left kind of Maureen in a really bad spot where she was, and I don't mean to use her first name, but our town planner in a bad spot, where she was chasing her own tail, trying to get ready for the meetings. And that's not right, because that's when we make mistakes. Because unfortunately, we've become dependent on you to have all the answers and everything prepared. And you do it brilliantly when you do it, but in the meantime, we've been like spoiled children. And so it's just been harder, and that's why, but I agree,
Yeah,
there should be a deadline.
If I can address it a little bit.
Yeah.
So actually, I feel from the town standpoint, because, and I'll say Brandon's a great job of managing the material that's coming in and disseminated it to the right people, probably. So I have it, but I don't then have to babysit who else it gets to. But the one of the big things, and you saw it through the spring on several of the applications of last winter, several of the applications where the applicants just aren't bringing in their materials. However, they are open applications. My understanding of the process is the applicant can bring it in, or they can bring it in at the meeting, but you're still getting it at the last minute. So if we can try to email it out to you faster, or to get it to you that little bit faster, it helps. There is that delay to the packages getting to you when they tell me they're arriving with something, and then we don't get it, or then we have copies of something that in the format it needs to be in order to disseminate it. So that is where one of the problems is, but also that, especially, and then you go to the especially public hearing items, which certainly you have to accept everything right up to the last minute and through the public hearing. So it's, I think, discipline, and yes, us changing our processes from the town standpoint to encourage and be a little more brutal with applicants with regard to what is acceptable, and postpone perhaps some of the scheduling, which you might recall we were doing a pretty good job of that maybe a year ago of, you know what, it came in, but I'm not scheduling it because it's not ready. And then that improvement went back to trying to schedule in a prompt manner. But that is the main reason we took deadlines off of the meeting schedule at the beginning of the year. When we published the meeting schedule, there used to be deadlines. If you meet the deadline, then 6 weeks before a meeting or 4 weeks before a meeting, you're on the meeting. And the applicants have the belief that they're on the meeting. Well, you didn't submit the right materials. It's hard to put you on the meeting, but we've already noticed the public hearing and it's being open. So, okay, let's let them at least present it and maybe get some of the minds rolling on it. So we can do a better job at our end of trying to make sure, and that is one of the main functions an assistant planner will be doing, having that quality eye that can review the applications when they come in to see if the materials submitted are quality materials that then can be analyzed by the other departments and the town planner. And he'll get to doing that as well eventually. But that's whether the material is good enough to schedule the meeting, or if they wait 2 more weeks. And that's the advantage to this commission having meetings twice a month, is that you don't hit those must decide dates very often. You can push things to another meeting to get that quality material. So I think it's a matter of, staff working a little harder on scheduling or not scheduling. Prematurely.
I think you guys work plenty hard enough, and basically back to Chairwoman Jones, to make your lives easier, to make our lives easier, I'm 100% okay with bringing back the deadlines for commission business. Obviously, public hearings are a different story. But, I know it's difficult for me, be having an applicant hand you paperwork 4 hours before a meeting for a commission thing, and then I'm sitting here really trying to understand it while the meeting's getting started.
And just as your counsel, I'm gonna say this to you, I think it's okay with you to be aggressive about that. You know, you can't be expected, and I've seen it so much, recently as we've gone back to public meetings, in other towns as well. I've seen very large packages of materials being handed up to board and commission members during the meeting. We had it happen in ZBA.
It happens in ZBA for
As
appeals
well.
quite frequently.
With a non-conforming use recently, you know, there's a history there, and I understand, you know, it takes time and so on and so forth. And that's why, you know, there is the flexibility, of the extension, and there's some time to play with there. But I think, you know, if you don't have time to review something and they're not giving you that opportunity, they need to recognize too that other people who are interested in the application, the public hearings on it, I mean, other people that are interested in the application, other than the commissioners who have to consider and act upon it, interested members of the public are not being given the opportunity. And when you don't give them the opportunity, it becomes a due process issue. So what they're creating as an applicant is a situation where they're giving somebody a claim to go to court with. You know, if they need, you know, classical statutory agreement, you know, they're giving them an opportunity to say, I don't have time to review this. Like, and the big thing with that is, you know, when they come in with the last minute change the plans, I mean, as I'm sure you've experienced many times. So, you know, they're gonna have to go through as an applicant, potentially another hearing process. It's gonna cost money, you know, because no revised drafts come free. I always say. So,
I agree with you 100%. You know, it's. Below that, Jim. I know, you know, delay will be stopped when the applicant brings up paperwork first time. So, to be strict on the applicant, say, we won't address this until you get everything to us. It's not too much to ask, I don't think. You know, and then we can act fast. I don't mind when it's go piece of paper like that for supplemental to my. But when we get that stack of supplemental, that.
Happens on a Friday, and on Thursday, whatever, that's not your fault. Did we, before we do anything else, did we do the final vote on the moratorium for the multifamily housing development? We did, okay.
It was, first by Brian for 6 months and then a second by Stevie Ellis.
Okay, all right, and then the moratorium, and we did the cannabis, and that's, what was the date on that?
5/31/23.
All right, 5/31/23. Okay, thank you. I'm sorry. I usually write this stuff down to keep myself straight. Anyway, so without further ado, as we wrap this up, yes. Okay, so just a couple of things.
They're just,
before we
and I
wrap it
think
up.
they are really little.
Yeah.
So this is FYI, Metro Realty is working on their Deming Road project and they've got, they're working on their foundation now. That's the workforce housing on Deming Road. They had it, I believe, the name they were planning to use is Deming Ridge, with the names of some of the other developments that have come along. I think, Mr. Biaggi is calling his project Turnpike Ridge or something along those lines. There's just some other names that are similar. So, unlike a street, the name doesn't, as far as I can tell, doesn't have to come through the commission for approval. But they did want to make the town aware that they've now looked, they were looking at that within next to the farm next door, that they have the brook next door, et cetera. And so now they're finding their paperwork with them being called the Flats at Little Brook. With that being.
Which one was this?
Flats at Little Brook, the workforce housing on Deming Road, the Metro Realty project,
Oh, yeah, okay.
so.
After they changed it to the black.
Flats at Little Brook is the place, is the stream along there evidently. We have been having several meetings with the Board of Education as well as PD and others. There's a meeting, a number of us, facilities, grounds, with regard to the McGee YWCA daycare drop off that's going to be happening in McGee and coming up with a plan for that. Earlier today, I got a parking plan, I can bring it up, or not a parking plan, but a pavement marking plan with the radiuses, those are all coming to us. Everybody's looking at them as far as what the radiuses are before those paving markings get done. But basically, I don't know if any of you can see it on here, probably take me longer than passing it around to do it, but it'll be basically the circle with arrows in it to direct the parent traffic. Passive, I think that would just be a lot faster. There may be some discretion on some of the pavement markings for widths,
Close the water.
but
Oh,
and then they're putting together their signage packet, but I wanted you to know we were all working on it and staff is
Put
moving
an apple
forward.
on the sign.
No, they're not.
The ADIO project, remains stalled for DOT permitting, but they are asking staff to come out and evaluate some trees that are just past the limit of disturbance with staff and the abutting property owners because of their size and condition. So we're doing a site visit on that, so there may be some tree removal depending on its impact and the amount, what it is. We'll bring it back to you if we think it's significant from the staff level. That's it.
So,
Brian, if you have a minute, I'd like to ask you about something.
all right,
Viability afterwards.
okay, so that's it for now, and so it's 9:44, and do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Thank you, Mr. Rogan. Do we have a second, Mr. Biella?
Second.
All right, further discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed, so moved. Good night, Steve.
Have a good night. Thank you.
Thanks for joining.